Welcome back to Breaking Bullying. This week, we are going to talk to a former school board member from Cedar Falls, Iowa. We'll get right into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is Dr. Doug Shaw. He's a professor at the University of Northern Iowa. Doug, thank you so much for coming on today. I know I said I was going to do this differently before, but let's go back to when you were younger. What's your personal experiences of being bullied?
Well, I almost feel awkward saying I was bullied because I was. Uh, but then, you kind of grow up, especially if you're in the school board and you hear other people's stories, as an adult. And so many people had it worse than I did that sometimes I almost feel presumptuous. But I certainly
Yeah.
know what the feeling is like. I was afraid to go to school. I felt that I was worthless. I wanted to kill myself in fourth grade, but I was a
Wow.
little too young to do anything about it. And at the time, you just live your life, but then you look back and you realize things were not right. The fourth grader shouldn't want to kill himself. Sleeping was an issue. I couldn't sleep. I would just stress out and just beat myself up all night.
What was going on at fourth grade that you wanted to kill yourself?
Well, I was different, and I was different, and people were bored, and that was basically it. I was, when I look back, I was an obvious target. I mean, part of it, we moved from New York when I was one, in first grade. So in second grade, I moved from New York, and I talked a lot and nobody could understand a word I said because I had the thick accent and I talked really
Yeah.
fast. There was actually one kid who had to translate for me to another kid. So yeah, I was just a different kid and I was strange. And
So, bullied for your accent, basically, for your New York accent.
well, it was part of that. It was just general strangeness. I was a
Okay.
weirdo,
Yeah.
and I was not the type of kid who. There are some weirdos who learn how to code switch, and I wasn't one of them. I just kind of stayed being myself, and it's because it's strange because I was basically not that different than I am now, but now I found myself to surround myself with a community people of who are tolerant of my. Now I'm an eccentric because I have a PhD. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it wasn't like a one specific thing, but I was the strange kid, and that I was targeted. I really now appreciate how every day I go to work. I often say I go to school because 'cause I'm a professor, right?
Yeah.
I go to school, and I safety's not even an issue. I am never, ever feeling unsafe, neither physically or socially. I am never unsafe, and that's kinda my normal now, but I'm aware that a lot of adults don't have that normal,
Yeah.
and I actually had a colleague who had been bullied to the point where he still acted like a victim even though he wasn't.
Was he bullied as an adult or bullied as a
I
kid?
believe he was. I believe he was targeted as an adult,
As
and
an
he was
adult.
so paranoid that it was a cycle. I only found out because I triggered him, and I mean, it was
Oh,
like,
really?
okay, so his I'm sorry, this is not really linear.
That's
I
okay.
hope you weren't hoping for a linear broadcast. Uh, I'm walking by his office. So now he's new, right? He's a new professor. He has his office door open, and he's not in it. And so I'm walking by and there's a dry erase board. So I wrote the eye strikes and I drew an eye because it's just the kind of strange thing I do. And then I ran into him like a half hour later. He's an agitated and he just like in desperate, did you draw that on my whiteboard? And I said, yeah. He said, why? And that's kind of hard to explain. I
Yeah.
said, well, because it was there. I saw a whiteboard with nothing on it. So I wrote and then he was all relieved, but still really shaken up. And it was obvious as one person who has been bullied to another that
Mhm.
he was thinking, "Holy shit, it's starting again." And I had to really reassure him, I without saying the word bully, I was like, "No, nothing like,
Yep.
no, I'm the type if you leave a whiteboard open, I will write some random shit on it. I was not targeting you."
Yeah, I can totally see his point though, because I was bullied myself, and sometimes you just assume things that aren't
Yep.
real, and it's it's hard. Like, do I confront this guy? Do I bring it up? It's hard. We had a guy on this podcast named Sumo Dan. His episode was Bullying Instinct, and if you don't know Sumo Dan likes to joke around with people. He just likes to have fun. But if
Right.
you don't know him and he jokes with you, you could be offended by him. You could think that he's bullying you, and he doesn't. That's
Yeah.
not his intention. That's just how Sumo Dan is. Sumo Dan's a big, loving guy. So, but I totally can relate to that to your colleague's fear there, because I may have felt the same way. Well, and you just did it out of good intentions and having fun. The eye strikes again. That's just odd. It's kind of funny, you know. It just appeared
Yeah,
on the whiteboard.
and then if I had done it to anybody who had never been bullied, they would have just said, "Okay, some either depending on their sense of humor, some guy or some asshole did this on my whiteboard," and they wouldn't think a second thing of it.
How long did your bullying last as a child?
Well, I was fine until when I moved in 2nd grade. It lasted through high school, basically, but in high school, it tapered off because then you start, I went to a very cliquey high school. I went to the high school that was the one that was the model of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, really?
Bueller's Day Off was about my high school,
Okay.
and, the director went there, you know? And so, I was bullied, but I didn't really run into people who wanted to bully me because I was in my own group, you know?
Yeah.
It was a cliquey enough high school that I wound up in a we were hardly the popular kids, but
Hey, that's okay as long as you
I
have
I
that
didn't I
group.
didn't it wasn't like I was regularly talking to people on the football team,
Yeah.
you know? It was like we were all in our little circles.
So your bullying started in 2nd
This
grade.
is surprisingly hard to talk about, by the way. That's an interesting thing.
It's hard to talk about, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised how hard it is for me to talk about this.
Yeah, if you talk about it a lot, you get used to it.
There was a project I was gonna do. Unfortunately, my colleague moved away. My next door neighbor is a professor of kinesiology, so he teaches future gym teachers.
Okay.
He teaches physical education teachers, and we became very close friends, and we wanted to do a project, and it just didn't happen because he moved. Because all of his students are coming from the perspective that gym class is everybody's favorite class, and they don't believe him when he says for some students, it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm a very popular professor, so I've had some of his students in my class, and they all adore me. And so what we were gonna do is we were gonna have him interview me about everything that went on and how I felt going to school. That was going to be the audio, and the visuals would be me doing things I didn't learn how to do in school because I was afraid to go to school. So I would be and so this would be the hilarious part to show these students, because while I'm saying these horrible things, he'd be throwing balls at me for to hit with a bat, and I'd be terrible at it, and
Yeah.
I'd be going through all the gym class stuff, being really bad at it as an adult, with that voiceover to kinda show the students, "Look,
Yep.
this kid didn't learn what we're trying to teach him." And it would be very funny at my expense, which of course
Yeah.
I can deal with,
Yeah. I
but we
actually
just never wound up doing the project.
yeah.
But that disconnect is that future gym teachers think everybody's favorite class is gym.
So, Doug, I wanna jump to first I wanna talk about how was the when you ran for school board, did you experience any hatred towards you?
No,
No?
this was the surprise. So, Cedar Falls at the time, it's not like that now, probably thanks to me. There was a group of kinda insiders. So all the people who ran for school board knew each other. They also knew the people from city council. It was a really kind of insular community of rulers. And I'm not saying they were bad people, they had nothing to hide, but this was it. And so I ran in as an outsider, so they didn't want me there.
Okay.
The quote from there's this guy who's never been on the school board, but he's a big benefactor to the school system. I'm not going to say his name. The quote I heard from him was, "Who the fuck is Doug Shaw?"
Huh,
When it looked like I was doing well. So, but what I was surprised is once I was in the board, even the guy who I thought I was going to clash with, the Christian conservative guy, I thought that was going to be my enemy. Every single one cared about the students.
that's good.
I was shocked that there were no hidden agendas, or they were so hidden I didn't see them. We all wanted, and we disagreed on how, but all of us wanted the schools to be better. So there was no hatred at all. I was welcomed, and eventually they really grew to like my different perspective. My best friend on the board was the Christian conservative guy because he was a big businessman.
Yep.
And it turned out one of his frustrations when we talked about spending money is nobody understood to the extent he liked about present value of money, marginal cost, and all the business stuff. And when he mentioned it to me once, and I said, I teach that stuff in my calc class, we bonded because we knew the math.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was not bullied or harmed in any or attacked any way when I was on the school board, and that shocked me. I really thought I was hunting for bear,
Yeah.
and everybody else we were just trying to figure out how to do our best job.
But when you were running for school board, they gave you an awesome, awesome, like, tagline. "Who the fuck is Doug Shaw? I love you could have
I
made
did
shirts with that. Who the blank is Doug Shaw? Oh my gosh, that would have been awesome. That's like, why didn't someone give me that idea? We have so
that
next
was a great idea.
so this podcast is pre-recorded, obviously, but so my next week episode is going to be my campaign results. Whether I win or lose, you'll find out next week. I'll record
Okay,
it.
and I'm gonna give you math advice on winning when the
Yeah,
podcast is over because it's
but
off topic, but yeah.
I'm happy to know that at least your school board treated you with respect because this current school board that I'm trying to get on, they don't know me. First of all, they don't know who I am, you know, but
Well, you
they
gotta be
do
aware
know. Go ahead.
the budget for your school board, the amount of money that they spend is equivalent to the city council. I mean, you go to these school board meetings and there are very nice booths from very nice architects who want to sell the school board on stuff.
Yeah,
There's a lot of money involved and there is a lot of potential for corruption because your local architect really, really wants friends on the school board.
yeah. Well, apparently, I'm not a friend of anybody because they've all sent out the current school board did this was Patrick Baker, and I'm not going to edit his name out because he's publicly already known that he doesn't like me, and
Mhm.
I don't even know this guy either. But anyways, um, he authored a letter and had the school board members sign it, basically saying if they vote for Tim Flynn, Mankato area public schools will not have a bright future. And now he's going around telling people he stuck his neck out, like he put his career on the line, telling people not to vote for me because I'm such a horrible person.
So
And
he's trying to butcher he's trying to butcher you
oh,
by talking about shedding light, right?
you want to see how
Well,
far they
he's a
went?
butcher, a baker, and a candlestick maker.
Yeah. So get
That's
this.
what it was.
So I'm gonna quote you that he passed on a quote to this group called Invisible St. Peter Greater Mankato.
Wait, what's the name of this group?
Invisible of St. Peter Greater Mankato. I don't know what this group is. It's a not for profit, but
Sounds like a damn secret cult.
yeah,
The
I don't know about this
Invisibles.
group, but
You
so
don't see us coming.
so there's this quote on this Facebook page that you can currently see. They're saying, I'm going to fast forward this here. They have their four endorsed candidates, which is not me. They're saying the other candidates in this race, that would be me, however, are being well funded by out of state groups who hold extreme positions that target vulnerable students and would increase rates of bullying and suicide. And if you want to know more about that, click the link, which goes to Patrick Baker's page, which is a school board member. So first of all, there's campaign finance report. I self-funded my whole campaign. Second, they're telling people that I would increase rates of bullying and I'm going to increase rates of suicide if I get elected. That's what I'm experiencing right now running for a campaign.
Wow.
It's really bad. Like these board members do not want me on this board. They don't know me. They never met me. They don't want me on there. And I have a strong platform of
Cedar
anti-bullying.
Falls,
Yeah.
in Cedar Falls, I don't know if it's an official rule, but it's definitely the unwritten rule. People who are currently board members do not say a word about the election if they're not running.
Well, I think that
They funnel money to my opponents, but they never said a bad word about me
yeah,
or a good word.
I
They just don't.
yeah, our school board members are above the law. So
Because
they don't
because
say anything.
because they have to work with whoever wins. If you trash somebody and then that person wins, then you have to work with them.
Well, they're pretty
So our
sure.
board, and again, I don't agree with them,
Yeah.
and some of them are really politically different from me.
Yeah.
We all had this thing where you might have to work with these people. Don't say bad shit.
The point what really stuck is when they said I was gonna cause kids to commit suicide. That's horrible. And that just shows you the type of people who are on our school board. They will go to the
Yeah,
extremes. And funny thing enough, our every year our district loses students to private schools, to to schools outside of our area. And they don't they don't see a problem with that. They think they're doing an amazing job. But anyways, I'm gonna talk more about this next week on my podcast after the election. I'm gonna go through my whole experience, but I want to focus more on
I'll
you.
be listening. So should
Yes,
you.
yes. So whether I win or lose, you'll hear my experience, and it's Sally.
Yeah.
It's not a good experience. I can be honest with you right now, but I have met some amazing people through this as well. So there's pros and cons to running. But Doug, you were on the school board, and they were trying to work with anti-bullying. What was your experience with that?
Okay, again, intention's good. Intention's good. And I would tell you if they weren't. Intentions were good. So we were making the transition. So when I started anti-bullying things where they talked about bullies and victims, now the thing is bullies, bystanders, and
Yep.
victims. And my main problem with that is it sends a false and very bad message that people are one or the other. They've divided everybody into three groups. Are you a bully? Are you a bystander? Or are you a victim? And in the grown up world, where there is a lot of bullying, as you are experiencing, people take all three roles. And sometimes you're a bully, sometimes you're a bystander, and sometimes you're a victim. I don't want to admit that I've been a bully, but I have been. And if you start making bullies into this like other kind of species, then that means if you're a bully, you're never going to want to not be one because, well, that's what I am. I'm a bully. I
So
identify with this
so
class.
what the school board is doing right now is they're putting labels on kids,
Well, were I,
or were.
this
Well,
was to,
during your
you know,
time,
I
during
know
your time, of course.
that was the trend. That was the trend in anti-bullying education was what to do if you're a victim, what to do if you're a bystander.
Okay.
And they don't understand. And so here's where you're not prepared. So you have someone who's a friend of yours who would do anything for you, who's a good, upstanding person who defends you. And then in other contexts, he's a bully. And then you don't believe people. My friend is not a bully because he doesn't bully you. And you're one of those three groups. And so you put everybody in one of those three groups. And that's the message. And so what you have is people who are absolutely bullying people, and nobody believes them because they say he's not in that class. Because I've seen him as a bystander and he stood up for me.
Yeah. I'm still confused on this layout. So you have to be so there's basically for the anti-bullying campaign, you have to be one of those categories. You're a
That's the way they talk. That's the
okay.
they don't they
To me, it
never
doesn't make sense. I'm still trying to figure this out their thought, and I'm still not getting this. Maybe I'll get it later on.
what they're trying to do is give kids practical tools as if you see bullying, what should you do?
Okay.
Which is fine. And I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
And I think
I think we call
although
it
now we can argue about what the actual tools are, but
yeah, we call them
uh
upstanders. So in the
upstanders.
yeah.
Is that the new word?
That's the new
Upstanders.
word came from Drew Alberg from the from the Bullying Recovery Resource Center in Colorado, which I love because these are people who don't stand by they stand up, upstanders.
That's good. I like that better. But the point is you can be in one context an upstander, in another context a victim, and in another
Mhm.
context a bully. Some of my worst, the people who bullied me the worst in junior high were victims in elementary school.
Yeah.
And it's obvious why. And the times I have bullied people is because I had experience as a victim. And I wasn't going to let that happen again. And I didn't do it a lot because it turns out that I'm a shitty bully.
Be nice to
I'm
be nice to
terrible
a
at it. I
person.
am really bad at it.
Okay, so
I'm
so so now I'm
not
understanding.
physically strong,
So
and I don't want to go and finish the person off.
yeah.
I feel bad.
So now I'm starting. I think I got this. So if you were a target or victim of bullying, that means you cannot be placed in the bullying label.
I think that's the message that
That
was
makes
being
no
sent.
sense at all. But okay, so that's
That was the message but as soon as you say bullies, upstanders, and victims, you're putting people into
yeah.
categories. Those are classes of people, those aren't behaviors.
But we know the school board loves putting people into categories. At least my school,
Oh
her school
god,
board
yeah.
does. They
Oh
love
god.
categories. They love labels. Um,
That's education in general.
yeah.
But yeah, so as soon as you say the phrase bullies, by upstanders, and victims, the message there is those are kinds of people as opposed to behaviors.
Yeah. That's not the right way to look at
There
this.
is I don't believe there's such a thing as a bully. I think there are such a things as people who do these
It's a
things.
behavior. Bullying is a behavior, and anyone
Yes,
can
it's not
participate
a
in this.
kind of person.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, um, uh, actor Sean Kanan, he's been on my podcast before. He kind of referenced kind of what you're talking about. He calls it a triangle. everyone, but he said it this way, everyone has experienced bullying of some type. They were either the bully, they were the victim or target, or they saw it happening, which is very true. Um,
Yeah.
but if you're gonna run an anti-bullying program, you can't just put people into categories and try to build off that one category. You gotta look at the behavior and understand, well, why is this kid participating in bullying behavior? You gotta look at the kid who's doing the bullying because he's probably got some mental health issues that probably needs to get looked
Mm,
at. And then you also gotta
yeah.
look at the kid as well who's being targeted of bullying. But we've discussed this before in this podcast. But going back to what the school board was, what do you remember what their anti-bullying policy was at that time to kind of regulate these three groups?
We had a program we paid for.
Okay.
Don't remember which one it was. It's probably not very different than the one
That's
that other people do,
yeah,
But so my 2 things, the first one was this putting the emphasizing that it was a type of person as opposed to a behavior,
yeah,
which I think served the students very badly, first of all, because it implied you can't change,
yeah,
and second of all, because as an adult, then you're not aware that someone who is a really nice upstander with you could also be beating his wife.
yeah. That's
And you
true.
don't believe he's beating his wife because he's so good to you, and you've gotten programmed into this idea you're one of the 3. The other thing was this very one size fits all. Why do people bully? And it's not like there's a single reason. And I get very, having experienced all kinds of it, some people bully because they were hurt at home.
Yeah,
Some people bully because they're bored, which is why I was bullied. I was not bullied by anybody because they were hurting at home and lashing out. It was because they were bored in class and a fun thing to do was to pick on me.
yeah,
And in retrospect, I made it fun. I remember how I reacted. It was fun to pick on me. It was objectively fun. And so if you're bored doing math problems and then you can pick on me, that was fun. So they weren't malicious, they were bored. But some people bully because of malicious, and some people are just fucking sociopaths.
yeah,
And unless you acknowledge that, then you're not going to win anyway, because there are people who do it because they get off on the pain.
yeah,
So I really didn't like this because the way you behave with different bullies, your reaction should be based on an individual situation, not a one size fits all. Which, of course, in any sort of institution, they want to give prescriptions. This is what you do, but it really depends on the people.
yeah. I think it's also the lack of understanding. As a person who was bullied as a child, when you gave them your input that, hey, this is not how it should be done. What was their reaction?
General reaction was I was just a guy talking. I hadn't done my homework, which was fair enough. It wasn't like I had any research to show them.
But you have lived experience.
Yes,
I mean,
it
you
didn't
can
count for a lot.
you can study about bullying, I guess, in a book, but if you haven't really experienced
I
it,
did I did I did not do the work to make a really solid case that we were going in the wrong direction, which I could have, I didn't.
kind of work would you have done differently?
I don't know because we didn't really create original content.
Okay,
We had to choose from the programs that
you
were
just
out
came up
there.
program. So why didn't they just take? So my
Like,
understanding of
so
this,
for example
my
so
understanding of the school board is this.
here's a solution that will never, ever pass a school board, okay?
Yeah,
No school board will ever announce, and this is what something that works.
yeah,
If someone bullies you, sometimes, depending on the situation, the best thing to do is punch them in the face as hard as you can, and then it stops. And
it's
that is
sadly
something that
true. It's sadly
no
true though,
school
but
board is
yep,
ever going to endorse that policy.
yep,
And I remember we told our daughter, "You will not be punished if you hit him. And if the school punishes you, we will just laugh at them." And of course, she was horrified because she grew up in this anti-bullying thing, which is you never hit back. That was the message they got.
yeah,
They would actually taunt each other and call each other bullies, even if they weren't, because that was the way the kids would hurt each other was, "You're a bully, ha, ha, ha," right?
yeah,
Uh, but so I was considered a Neanderthal. Fortunately, my wife backed me up on it. She and I were on the same page. It was such Neanderthal advice, "My God, what are you, a Republican saying your kid should hit people?" But it's like, no, the Republicans were right on this one. Sometimes the thing to do, if you're being bullied and you can do it, punch the bully in the face as hard as you can. And even if you get beat up, they're not gonna touch you. Now,
Yep,
that's not for everybody, and that's not for every
no,
bully, and sometimes it's the worst thing you can do. And
exactly.
that's the problem is sometimes it's the worst thing you can do. No school board's going to endorse this, but sometimes that does solve the problem.
But so they're not gonna endorse it, which I totally agree, you don't wanna endorse it. But we do know, because I teach martial arts for a living, and I have a student who was she was what's that term? I can't think of it right now. She didn't have a gender. What's that called again?
Non-binary?
Non-binary. She's non-binary, and this kid wanted her to scream like a girl on the playground, and so this kid punched her in the stomach on the playground at school, and, she went to go look for help, and the kid followed her, couldn't find a teacher. She turned around and round kicked that kid in the face, right in the nose, made that kid cry. She gets in trouble. The school wanted her to apologize to the bullying victim, I mean, to the bully, and she didn't. But,
She did or
she
didn't?
didn't. She didn't. She did not apologize at all. The bullying stopped that day. Hasn't
Yeah.
been bullied again. But so here's the problem with the school boards. They're not gonna endorse that, but they're not gonna do any they're not gonna make any policies that will prevent that from happening, where a kid actually has to either get the confidence to hit back. They're not gonna make a policy that's gonna prevent that. So what are they doing? They're just gonna create more labels and say,
Right,
"You're
and
a
some of it's
bully."
the principal too. I mean,
Yeah,
this there is the chain of command, right? The school board, that's ultimately the principal's decision.
yeah,
But where the school board comes in, and here's where you can do good. If the kid is suspended and appeals, then you're on that jury, and you can make the argue that you will that kid should not be suspended.
yeah. I didn't know that. So,
Yeah, and your district's different than mine. We never saw anything about detentions. If a kid got detention, we never heard about it. If a kid was suspended from school, then that could come before us, and that's where I did some real good
okay, good.
when we were talking about penalties for kids who were suspended.
Yeah. Um, I think we kinda went off topic on my original question, though. Going back to your research that you should have done to help make a better policy for the school board, what do you have ideas now that you would start trying to create to make a stronger, anti-bullying policy for your school?
I think the first thing I should what I would do now if I were going to take it up is see what successful schools are doing, and that's the homework, and that was a weakness, I didn't do the homework.
I've heard of successful schools.
I should have seen what other districts are doing, and now we have an internet. There's never any excuse for not doing research
Yeah.
now.
There's this one
Uh,
school out in California. This one guest told us about her school, which does amazing job at bully prevention. And
what do they do?
all the kids are just taught to say this phrase. If they see someone trying to pick on another kid, they stand up and say, "Hey, we don't do that here." And it just stops it in place. It just stops it. We don't do that here. So if you have a friend, he's a new kid from town, he's gonna pick on someone, whatever, that friend that spans the school tell us the new friend, "Hey, we don't do that here. You don't do that. You get in trouble." And it just stops it. So it's teaching kids about respect and kindness for each other.
Yeah.
And this school's got it down apparently. So this mom's had nothing but positive things to say, like, "Wow, that sounds really good. Respect
That's
for
why I
each
like
other."
that phrase you said, "We don't do that here."
Yeah,
The word "here" means that we're not gonna condemn what happens at home. What's happening at home is happening at home. You're in a space now where that's different.
yeah. It's such a and I love it. So if I get on a school board and I wanna try to bring this up, I wanna get kids to start saying this, "Hey, we don't do that here." If you recognize it, just say it to your friend.
Right.
"Hey, we don't do that here." Recognize it.
Again, there's a limit to what the school board does. This
Yep,
is something that maybe principals have to do.
yep. Do you have any advice for parents or kids who are experiencing bullying in schools and you feel like the schools aren't really helping them out?
Yep.
What can they do?
First thing for parents is stop doing the program stuff. Find out what specifically is happening because every situation is different, and everybody in the world on the internet, every blog post, every administrator is gonna tell you every situation is the same. It could be that the solution is to call the kid's parents. It could be that the solution is to try to make friends with the kid. It could be the solution is to punch the kid in the face. It does you don't know. My biggest bullying thing was solved when, my mom invited the kid over to my house with the mother, to apologize, and then the mom spontaneously got into a conversation, so the bully and I just wound up playing together, and we got to be friends.
Hmm.
And people don't agree that people can't believe that I am still friends with this kid who bullied me mercilessly, but we became friends. What the fuck? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's
And I'm not saying that would work for every pair of
no,
kids.
but it's very common
Our
though. It's very common.
our parents were wise enough to know, "Hey, these 2 kids have a lot in common. I bet if we got them in a room together, they would start playing games," and we did. We liked cards.
Yeah, with parent supervision though, right? Or how did that work?
I don't remember there
Okay,
being parent supervision. In retrospect, knowing my mom, I bet she was freaking listening at the door.
okay,
But as a kid, I do not have any memory of there being parental supervision. As an adult, knowing my mother, there is no way there was not parental supervision.
yeah,
But the advice I'm giving is every situation is different, and you have to figure out what's gonna work for your situation.
yeah,
And I know that's a mealy-mouthed answer, but that's the honest truth, is there is no one, "This is what you do if your kid is being bullied," because every situation is different.
yep. I had a crack shot bowling seminar a few weeks ago in Glendale, California, and Michael D. Cohen, who is an actor, um, he brought up an acronym called UP, and the U stands for understanding why you're being bullied, and I love that because like yeah, because if we can figure out why our kids are being bullied,
Mhm.
we'll have an easier time trying to resolve this. So I just love that the acronym UP. So under and then the P was protection. Protection can be self defense. It could be going to a teacher, going to your parent, going to a trusted adult, whatever. But the understanding of why you're being bullied that's really great. Doug, I want to thank you for coming on today, sharing me your knowledge as a former school board member, sharing us your story. Um, if people want to get a hold of you, do you accept emails? Do you have a Instagram, Facebook?
Doug at dougshaw.com.
Okay. Do you have a website as well?
Doug, yes,
DougShaw.com?
yep.
Okay, making sure.
I also have a book on creativity, which has nothing to do with this podcast, but my late mother would be mad if I didn't mention it.
Yes.
Buy my book. Okay.
So if you're listening on audio, the link will be in the description. If you are on YouTube, you saw it go across your screen. So, Doug, thank you so much for coming on today. And for myself, you can always find us at our very own website, which is www.breakingbullying.com. You can also reach out to us at our email address. If you have a story of your own bullying to share, or for whatever reason you want to get a hold of us, our email address is breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. Now, if you're a victim of bullying and you don't know where to turn, there is online resources to help you. The first is the government's very own anti-bullying website, and the address is www.stopbullying.gov. And other online resource is www.pacer.org/bullying. Now, if you have had thoughts of suicide or of self-harm, we implore you to stop. Reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. That number is very simple. It's 988. I'm Tim Flynn, and thank you for listening, and we will be back next week to continue the conversation to break the silence on bullying.